understand why that's the case, and why backup and disaster recovery in particular are the best ways nowadays in the 21st century. A lot of things have changed. Want to make sure that your data is protected. So, February 2015, presented by Common Sense Solutions. I'm going to move over to the next slide and introduce myself. There's me, my smiling face there. I'm Kevin Cornett. I'm a senior staff member on the networking team, and I specialize in data protection, backup, and recovery, and custom cloud solutions. These are all really new, sexy technologies for the 21st century, and I'm glad to be a part of it at Common Sense Solutions. A little bit about our company. Who are we? Okay, we've been around since 1993. We've got offices, our headquarters in Lombard, Illinois, where I'm broadcasting from today. We've also got an office in St. Louis, Missouri. We handle IT support, managed network services, over 750 businesses. Our clients of ours with over 1,000 users under management. We have 33 staff total across the entire business, not just on the networking side. And we do network and computer services, managed services, break-fix type work. We also handle a line and support a line of LOB, or line of business management applications. We offer business continuity planning, which disaster recovery and backup are definitely a part of, but that doesn't encompass all of the business continuity planning that we offer. We also offer BPC, or business process consulting. We want to make sure that not only the IT aspects of your business are running smoothly, but all other facets of your company are running at optimal performance. And we're always ready to help wherever we can. As I mentioned before, one of my specialties is custom cloud solutions. Any of you thinking of moving anything to the cloud, we can definitely help with that as well. The presentation today obviously is about backup and DR. DR is disaster recovery, and I want to show you how those two things are different. Backup is not disaster recovery, and disaster recovery is not necessarily backup. We also offer custom programming from an application standpoint, and also web design. So that's a little bit about Common Sense Solutions. So now let's start with an overview of some common risks to your data integrity. So you can see the pie chart at the bottom kind of breaks down the different components or the different things that could go wrong, let's say, that would pose a risk to your data. So first on the top of the list is obviously equipment failure. We use servers as tools to host Windows, to host, servers that in the end of the day give us the set of tools we need to produce our data, or our unique data, our content, what we use, the information we use to run our business. So when we're talking about equipment failure, we're talking about software failure, server failure, network failure. All these things can potentially pose a risk to your data. The second thing on the list is inside attack or mistakes, or the oops factor. I could say for sure, and maybe some of you have shared this experience, you're on a laptop, you're using your trackpad, you're trying to just move the cursor across the screen, and the next thing you know, you've moved something to the recycle bin, or moved something from the network to your desktop, or for whatever reason. Then everybody freaks out, oh, where's the data? It's gone, let's go to the backup. Well, a lot of times that's just, it's mistakes. I do it too. Everybody does it. So big point there, use an external mouse, a lot less likely to happen. Malicious employees. They're few and far between. Definitely happens. Somebody's let go from the company, or they're just disgruntled in general and just having a bad day, and they decide to erase the last 2 months of sales work and proposals they've done. That's definitely want to have a backup in place, something to fall back on in case that happens. Again, few and far between in that particular instance. Most people are pretty well aware that there's legal repercussions for doing those types of things. I would say the next on the list would be an outside attack, and that's viruses. Particularly one in particular that's cropped up over the last year, 2 years, is variants of the CryptoLocker virus. And if you've ever heard CNN or MSNBC, I mean, if you don't know what CryptoLocker is, I'll explain it briefly. It's a virus that can get in through numerous ways, usually by clicking a link in an email, visiting a malicious website. You don't necessarily know it's bad, but this nasty little beast gets into your network. It gets in one PC, and it does its best to infect anything on the network, and it encrypts. It uses AES-256 encryption, which is pretty much unbreakable, and it encrypts all of your Word documents, anything it can find. It will encrypt the entire folder, everything it can get its hands on, and then it actually leaves instructions in the folder it encrypted to say, hey, here's how you can pay us to get the keys to decrypt your data. So, threats like this are next-generation threats. These are not your typical viruses. They're not necessarily destructive. From your perspective, it is destructive because you can't access your data when it's encrypted. But at the same time, they give you a way out. You just pay them $5, $10 grand, depends on what they encrypt. It's not the same for everybody. And you can get your data back. They'll send you out decryption keys, and there you go. However, for most people, that's just not practical. And with a disaster recovery and backup plan in place, it's completely, you can avoid, sidestep that entirely. Crypto hits your network, and, depending on the solution you choose, you say, no big deal. 5 minutes later, you're back in business. Natural disasters, again, they don't always happen, but I would include power failure in that category. Some people may be in areas that don't necessarily have reliable power generation, or their power frequently goes out. We'll talk about some preventative measures you can take to mitigate that. The natural disaster component is really where the disaster recovery component of the BDR overall, backup disaster recovery, that's where that really comes into play. If your office catches on fire, you have a flood, you never know what could happen. Lightning strikes, takes out your electrical grid, who knows? But the disaster recovery component is meant to do exactly that, get you up and running as quick as possible in the event of a natural disaster that affects your primary site where you conduct business. So moving on to the next slide, let's look at some key stats to consider. And before I jump into here, I just want to let you know that if you don't have a backup and disaster recovery plan in place, and as we go through here, you'll see you're not alone. 75% of businesses worldwide, according to a DR Benchmark preparedness study, this is what they do, this is all they do, is monitor disaster recovery plans of businesses. 75% of companies worldwide are failing by either not preparing, not having a plan, or failing to properly execute existing DR plans. Part of execution on the second bullet point is testing your DR plan. So internally, companies who have a plan, have spent the money to create the plan, have bought the solution, have implemented the solution to back up their data, when they test their plan, namely by doing test restores and auditing the plan, 65%, so over half, don't even pass their internal audits of the plan that they paid for, the software that they paid for to implement the plan. They don't even pass. They go to restore some random piece of data that, based on their plan, should be available to restore according to their recovery time and point objectives. We'll go over those concepts in a few. So just having the plan, that's great. That's one step. The solution, software, hardware, whatever you need to implement that plan, that's the second step. Pretty much required if we're going to do this at all. But the third component is actually testing the plan. Your backup solution is only as good as its restore capability and the overall, I guess, how solid your plan is and how it was spec'd out to begin with. But a restore is the ultimate test. You know, the best backup software in the world, but if you don't test its restore functionality to verify that it's meeting your objectives, you're in for problems. You're in for some trouble. The last point is kind of scary. Over a third of companies who've experienced a data loss event, be it disaster or otherwise, viruses, CryptoLocker, what have you, 35% admit to never fully recovering the lost data. That's a pretty scary statistic. You know, I'm of the opinion personally, and I think a lot of my colleagues in the industry, peers in the industry, would share this opinion. If you have a proper DR plan and you test it properly, all of this is completely preventable. These are preventable issues. From a cost standpoint, you're going to pay for it one way or another. It's like insurance for your data, like insurance for your car, insurance for your house, insurance for your health. It's all insurance. It's insurance against things that, we just don't know. And rather than riding on luck that nothing's going to happen, we're not going to have a flood or fire or get infected with the virus, we really need to have those plans in place. And 35% is a huge number. And I can attest to that. Sometimes the companies get their data restored, but because they weren't backing up frequently enough according to their business goals and objectives, they only recover maybe a 2-week-old copy of some critical business information. So that would fall into the category of not fully recovering. So, with that in mind, let's go through 3 examples here. The first 2 are sort of hypothetical. The last one is a real-life example. So the first one, let's look at a service firm. Your lawyers, CPAs, accountants, what have you. You bill out services. You got 10 billable staff, and you're down for 2 days. Your staff is only 50% productive without computers, so maybe they have hard copy files somewhere that they can work on, something offline they can do. So they're not completely out of, completely underwater here. But we do the math on that. We take 10 people, 50 times 50% productivity at 16 hours at $150 an hour, and they're down 12 grand. And that's for 2 days with employees 50% productive. Go to 100% productivity without a computer, and you can extrapolate out that it basically doubles. So the next example would be a distributor where lost profit on orders is a key thing here. Also down for 2 days, but they lost all their orders. So their lost revenue calculation works like 10 people times 16 hours at $25 an hour, and we're assuming they're 100% unproductive without computer access. And then the profit on the 60 lost orders at $350 an order, that equates to, $25,000, and now we're talking real money. The last example is a real-world example. It's anecdotal. It's a client I deal with, and about 5 years ago, they were down for 6 entire weeks due to a server failure. They had all their data on their server and absolutely no backup, and they just had people around the office pretending to be IT people and said, "Oh yeah, I put the hard drive on the server. It's backing everything up." Well, again, you don't know that until you go to restore if you don't have a DR plan in place that you test on a regular basis. They happened to produce journals, medical journals. They had hard copies of these journals. They were forced to recreate in digital form using Adobe product, CS Creative Suite, I believe, from hard copy, forced to recreate graphics, artwork, collateral, everything to do with making those digital copies, putting them back up into digital form and easily accessible by their clients. They were basically mailing out journals in the meantime. So not only cost associated with the different way they have to distribute their product, the lost revenues, look at that number, $250,000, 25 people, graphic designers, mind you, not cheap labor, times 240 hours at $40 an hour on average. That's $250,000 bucks. I mean, that is some serious money. So there is a statistic out there that floats around that say half of all businesses that experience a data loss at this level pretty much call it a day. Put a fork in it. It's done. You're bankrupt. File for bankruptcy. There's really not much you can do. You don't have the information you need to service your clients. Plain and simple. Entirely preventable. Let's look at some planning criteria. If you were to go to sit down and do a DR plan, what would you do? Well, first, I hope you would call Common Sense Solutions and have to speak with me, and I definitely walk you through it. But here's the overall skeleton of what you would throw together in order to plan something on your own. Again, we can help you with all of this. So the first thing to note is you need to understand the types of information and data that your business uses. The main distinction I use is there's tools that you use to create the data, servers, workstations, the Windows operating system, the Office applications. Okay, those are tools. And that would cover the non-critical data section. I'm kind of jump into the second point. Non-critical data is relatively simple to recreate. Okay, like I mentioned, Windows OS, we can reinstall that. Microsoft Office, we can reinstall that. QuickBooks, we can reinstall that. The QuickBooks data file, however, we can't reinstall that. Your Word documents, your PDFs, things that you scan, we can't restore that. That's the unique data, the product that you create from your tools. So on the critical data section, it's very complex to recreate most of the time. LOB stands for line of business applications. So the applications your users live and breathe in most of the business day, that would constitute, QuickBooks, Computeries if you're a CSS client, ERP or Enterprise Resource Planning, MRP as well. That would be, JobBoss, Made to Manage, any number of those programs out there that run your business, Epicor, Foundation, HeavyJob, HeavyBit. There's a number of them out there. We can reinstall those applications. We cannot necessarily recreate that database without a valid backup. We've got static data, CAD drawings. They don't change that often. You've got a subset of those CAD drawings that are constantly changing for projects you're working on, et cetera. For the most part, the static data, you need it, but it's not going to take you completely down as if your QuickBooks went offline. Again, we can't recreate your CAD drawings. You need to have a backup solution in place. Pretty much hard stop right there, period. You have to have something in place. We can't even pretend to tell you that everything's going to be okay if you experience a data loss event with no backup. Archived and historical data, for example, when you do an AP check run, maybe you scan all of your AP checks, keep them for 7 years, and that replaces the wall-to-wall banker's boxes that you probably got stacked up in your closet or in your warehouse. Or backups of old user files, people who've left the companies, critical employees, salesmen. Maybe you need a copy of all their emails. You store that on your server. That's critical data. You reference that from time to time, especially when customers complain years after the fact, hey, this wasn't done right. You need to go back and refer to that data sometimes, and that's also something we can't recreate. Server application data. Let's say you run a Microsoft Exchange server or other email server inside your organization on a server on premises, which means in your office or under your control. SQL or Access databases. A lot of the times a SQL database is the back end for an ERP system. And again, we can reinstall Microsoft Exchange. We can reinstall SQL Server. We cannot recreate your emails, your databases without a valid backup. So that's a critical thing to know. I think when it comes to trying to calculate the cost, let's say, okay, how much money do I want to spend on a backup solution? Well, what's the cost of an hour of downtime to your business? And figure in the soft cost too. You could do the basic math, take hourly rates, average it out, et cetera, times your number of employees like we did in a previous slide. But it's also the soft impact, soft cost impact. Employee morale is impacted. They come in Monday morning. The server went down last weekend. Now they know what they're in for. They're going to have to recreate all the work they did, in the time since the server was backed up to now. So, that definitely has an impact on employee morale. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do double work. And of course, lost sales, lost revenue. What are you going to lose in that hour that you're down? How many orders do you get? What's each order mean to you to the bottom line to your business? So now I want to cover some two geeky terms. Hopefully I don't lose you guys. I'll try not to go too deep in the weeds. And I'll boil it down as simply as I can. And I'm going to start with the second bullet point, recovery point objective. All right, these are DR planning topics. Recovery point objective is the target point in time to which data or system or function must be restored after a disaster in order to avoid a lapse in business continuity. So when you ask me, what is a recovery point objective? I say, I return with a question and say, when was your last backup? Let's take an example of using tape. You back up at 9 p.m. every night. Your recovery point is 9 p.m. the previous night. If your data, your server, whatever, you experience a data loss event at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, okay, your recovery point availability is going to be 9 p.m. of the previous day. You're pretty much out an entire day of productivity. So that's pretty much what the recovery point objective is how much, what point in time do you need to be able to recover your data? 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, last night at 9 p.m., is that good enough? And it can be different between different types of business data, the critical data described above. You can have different objectives both in time and point for different types of critical business data. So recovery time objective. So let's say you experience an outage and you say, okay, data's gone. We got to restore it. How fast do you need that data restored? Let's take an example again. I'm going to pick on tape backup. Tape backup is notoriously painfully slow. The more you're recovering, the longer it's going to take. If you're recovering a simple file, no big deal. You can usually seek the tape. The software can usually find the data and get it all restored in under 10 minutes. If you're restoring an entire system, you're going to have some problems. So how quick do you need your data restored once you've noticed a data loss event has occurred? How quickly do you need it to be back in order to avoid a lapse in business continuity and where you're going to start having to get out your calculator and adding up the hours of downtime you're experiencing from this data loss event? So again, I just wanted to briefly touch on those concepts. They're really important, not for you to understand. That's what we do. It's important for you to know that they exist and that these are criteria that we use when trying to develop disaster recovery plans for organizations. No two companies are alike. Every company is unique in both its business operations and the types of data that it works with. And whereas QuickBooks might be important for one company, QuickBooks is really only used by one user at another company who, has Carbonite on their machine or does something simple. So it's not the same for every company. So what can we do to try to prevent all this from happening? We don't ever want to experience a data loss event. What can I do today that's going to help me? Maybe you don't like me. Maybe you never want to call Common Sense Solutions. I'm still going to let you know what you can do, steps you can take to protect your data. We're going to start with the obvious, servers and workstations. The first 4 points above on the first bullet point relate directly to servers. 5 points, actually. All of them relate to servers. Only the last 2 really relate to workstations. So first you want to have redundant power supplies. That's 2 power supplies in your server, either one of which can handle the entire load of the server. One power supply fails, you've got another one to keep it going. Related to that, you want a good battery backup. You want a battery backup, or a UPS as they're commonly known, to allow you at least enough time to power down the server properly in case you lose power. You do not want the server just shutting down at random because, ComEd decided to do a rolling blackout in the middle of summer. Everybody's using their air conditioning, and they do that. So you want to have a good battery backup with enough capacity to keep you going for a while. So the third topic I don't expect many of you to understand, but I'll try to boil it down as best I can. Disk RAID. Every server uses hard drives, just like every computer uses hard drives. Every workstation uses hard drives. So disk RAID implies, RAID stands for Redundant Array of Independent Drives. What we do is we set up an array. What it does is it takes each physical disk, and it creates a virtual disk with some fault tolerance built in. When one disk fails in that array, what's called a hot spare or a spare tire, which changes itself basically. If you use the analogy of a spare tire on a car, it's a drive that, hey, I noticed a drive in the array failed. I'm going to jump in and take its place. And other than some minor performance impact for a period of time, depending on how much data there is, you don't even experience a data loss event. So those are some things you'd want to have in your server. You also, where do you put your server? Is it stuck in a closet? Is it in a closet? I mean, these things kick off a lot of heat. So we want it in a secured location. We want to have it adequately ventilated. Dust, heat, and moisture are the 3 main enemies of any electronic device. And so we just want to make sure that we keep everything nice and clean. If the server is pretty powerful, it's probably generating a lot of heat along with the rest of the stuff you have in your in your networking room or your closet or wherever you decide to put your equipment. We want to keep it in a secured location. We only want to allow people who should have access to it to have access to it. We don't want to set up Joe Smith's workstation right next to the server where he could potentially kick it. We also don't want to put the server on the floor where your cleaning crew can bang into it with a vacuum cleaner. I wrote a newsletter article on this some time ago. We actually have at least a couple times a year when carpet cleaners come in. They'll either bang the server because it's sitting on the floor, and they don't care. They don't know what they've done. But and the other more common thing is they'll plug their high voltage equipment, the carpet cleaning machine, into the same circuit where your server's plugged in. Boom, they trip the circuit. If you don't have a battery backup, even if you do sometimes with not enough running capacity to keep it going, you trip the circuit, the server goes down, it's powered off, just as if ComEd had done a rolling blackout or you've lost power. Definitely not something we want to happen. Second to last point there, install and maintain antivirus solutions for servers and computers / workstations on your network. So to install something like FreeAVG, does that protect against crypto? Maybe, if it's updating properly, if it's getting its latest definitions. So just like a backup solution that you implement but don't test, an antivirus solution you install but don't maintain or update, or try to save some cost and go with a free product, they're not going to protect you against all the threats that are out there today, hands down. Not recommended. And the last bullet point under the servers workstations category is IPS. IPS stands for Intrusion Prevention Systems or Software. It usually runs on your firewall or your router, and it stops people from getting access to your network, hackers, whoever, people who develop, try to penetrate your network, gain access to your servers and take your data. It's usually integrated into the hardware component or the firewall that sits in between your internet connection and your server and all the other PCs in your network. So the second point, and the main reason why we're doing this webinar, is so you understand that you need to have a right-sized backup plan. If you go out to the internet and download Carbonite, install it on your PC, and think that's protecting everything, you could not be more wrong. Carbonite is a consumer solution, and it protects against Word docs, protects against photos, pictures. It does not protect SQL servers, Exchange servers. From my understanding, it doesn't even run on Windows Server OSs. So you need a right-sized backup plan, which sets the goals properly for your organization and utilizes the appropriate tools that will make sure that that plan kicks in high gear, and it's there and it's ready for you in case you experience a data loss event. You need to faithfully execute the plan. That means doing regular test restores. Remember, I had said before, the quality of any backup solution, specifically the backup software or the hardware that you use, is judged by its restore capabilities. So when you have a data loss event, and this is why you need to do test restores, when you have a data loss event, ideally you would see this during your test restore process of your plan, you're going to go to restore that data. That's when most people really try to figure out how to use their backup software, and that's not recommended. You're going to want to restore that data as quickly as possible to prevent anything from impacting your customers or your business bottom line, and ideally all of it. So yeah, we definitely want to conduct regular test restores. You want to store backups on and off-site. So that means you want to put the backups, have a USB hard drive, great, but you want to have some kind of cloud component too. We want to back up as much data as possible. Storage is cheap these days. So ideally, the path to a quick recovery time objective goal is to back up everything. Windows OS, all the applications, the entire server, including all of your unique data. This decreases the recovery time in case of a catastrophic failure. If you're backing up everything and you're using an appropriately right-sized backup solution to implement your plan, you can be up and running in no time, depending on what the nature of the failure is. Again, you want to automate the plan as much as possible. Less user participation equals less margin for error. Joe Smith forgets to change a backup tape for a month. You're backing up to the same tape for a month. that tape is pretty much useless at that point. It's been used too much. You forget to take a USB hard drive off-site. You forget to take a tape off-site. Well, there goes your DR out the window. You have no disaster recovery because everything is in your office. So the less you have users in your office involved in your backup and disaster recovery plan, aside from validating test restore results, the more ideal it'll be. And on other notes, some ancillary topics here, you want to establish policies for user passwords. Password 123 isn't going to cut it anymore. You should have them use complex passwords. We can talk about all that offline if any of you have questions on any of these topics. And you want to have them make sure that they change those passwords regularly. You want to have an acceptable use policy for your business network equipment. When users come into the office and they want to go on Facebook or, couponprinter.com or whatever they want to go on, you want to make sure that they're aware that they're using a business computer and that's maybe not acceptable. That just opens your network up to risks from viruses in particular. BYOD stands for bring your own device. Joe Smith wants to bring his home laptop because you told him he couldn't surf Facebook on his work computer. Okay, so he brings his home laptop, which just so happens to be encrypted or infected with the CryptoLocker virus. As soon as he plugs into your network, as soon as he attaches to your wireless, he's going to most likely have to authenticate with his username and password, and boom, whatever's on his laptop is now your problem and your employee's problem. We definitely want to have a policy in place for employees who bring their own iPads, Androids, connect their cell phones to your Wi-Fi. I mean, it really needs to be an all-encompassing plan, so there's no doubt at the end of the day and no finger pointing. Terminated employees. When somebody leaves the company, you want to change their password to any network resources right away. And it's just for plausible deniability. Just in case, you just want no doubt left that this person could not possibly have done anything to impact your business by leaving the company. And if you have users who quit, you don't know it right away, but as soon as you know that somebody's about to leave the company, your first, as they're telling you this, you should be firing off an email to your IT team to have their passwords reset. Although they may have taken data, hopefully they copied it and didn't move it, meaning taking it off your server and putting it onto their local PC before they decided to give you the, the reverse pink slip. So we're going to go into some backup options. These are the most common types of backup today, starting with the oldest at the top, which is tape, and moving down to the newest, which is server-based, CDP, which stands for Continuous Data Protection. And that's what I specialize in. Tape backup, it still has its use case scenarios, okay? It's tried and tested, been around for years. The software support, everything supports a tape drive. It works in any environment. If any of you have Linux servers or, HP AIX or Unix servers, a lot of times tape is your only option. So there are some pros with tape. They can also store a lot of data for a relatively cheap amount of money. Tapes can now hold up to 5 terabytes of data. So if you're a graphic or like a movie studios, CG animation, they typically use tape backup to archive all of the digital files and content they create. And it's a cost-effective method for them. I'm not sure if any of you do that or do work on movies. If so, I'd love to meet you. But some cons of the tape. Okay? Drive and media cost. Look over to the right. $2,500 is an average to store 2.5 terabytes on LTO6, which is the latest technology. If you cheap out on the drive, you can get away with $2 grand. If you go for an autoloader that changes tapes for you and knocks out the con that says manual intervention, autoloaders do that, but they go on upwards of $5,000 to $7,000, depending on the technology. The LTO tapes themselves are about $40 a pop, and you notice the asterisk there. They require at least 30 media for proper rotation and lifespan, from our experience. You're going to be taking some of those off-site. Example before, Joe Smith forgets to change the tape, and he's backing up to one tape over and over and over and over again. Well, hopefully you never have to restore anything from that particular tape, because chances are it's going to be useless. You're going to get CRC errors, all kinds of errors. The tape is unreadable, and boom, you have no backup. Software for tape drives, usually about $800 plus annual maintenance. So tape has its benefits, its drawbacks, like anything else. But as we move forward in time, we're in the 21st century now. It's 2015. If you're using tape backup, please call us. Let me let me help you. The next in line is USB hard drives. Okay, I frequently see this. It's the next evolution from tape. A little bit better. Doesn't quite go all the way in most cases. Because this is normally implemented by companies and users themselves who think they might know IT, think they might know the value of your business data. They often don't, and are just trying to get that one hit list off their task list and not have to worry about it because it's not their primary job duty. Yeah, I plugged the USB drive into the server. You're being backed up. Everything's great. Well, not necessarily. It does have offer fast restores. It's coming from a hard drive, so that's faster than tape when you're restoring. Capacity is usually not an issue. They go up to 4 terabytes today, maybe 5, and that's only going to increase as time goes on. So they're pretty cost effective, and you can usually implement the solution relatively quickly. So those are some pros. A lot of the cons also tie in back to tape backup. The media reliability. Hard drives are mechanical devices, just like the drives in your server and your PCs. They are prone to fail, and they will fail. It's just a question of when. They require manual intervention. Somebody still has to change out those USB drives. And I hope you're using more than one. It's very inflexible. And it offers extremely poor RPO, just like tape. A lot of the USB hard drive backup is done just like tape, 9 p.m. the night before. So if you have a failure at 4 p.m. the next day, are you really prepared to lose 7 hours of productive work, assuming you start at 8 a.m.? Cost for USB hard drives, 2 4 terabyte drives, $450, $500. I'm a firm believer in you get what you pay for. And because that's not necessarily true with the cost for tape above, that's another reason we're having this webinar. Tape is just out. So let's move on to cloud. Okay, by cloud I'm talking about Carbonite, Mozy, those types of applications. They offer adequate recovery time objectives. Okay, they can recover just like from a USB hard drive. They use as a local vault, so they back up to the vault or the hard drive first, and then the software copies data from that vault out to the cloud. So you get the integrated offsite copy for DR purposes, which is definitely a pro. You're moving up into the 20th century. It's good for small data sets. It's good for about 100 gigabytes of files, AutoCAD drawings, Word docs, etc., and so forth. The con, okay, a couple cons here. Your server resources, you need to really have a beefy server to run these solutions because they do require resources. You have the option of backing up multiple times per day, but you don't want to have complaints from your users. Hey, things are slowing down. I can't get my work done. Everything's slow. There's also security concerns for cloud copy. What data center is it going to? For instance, maybe you're subject to PCI compliance or SOX or HIPAA compliance. Are those data centers or those solutions compliant with those legislative mandates? Cloud can be expensive. Most of them charge per gigabyte, but not always. It varies. And one final point, 2 final points actually. One's not on the slide here under the cons column for cloud. It's inadequate for large data sets. If you have 400 or 500 gigabytes of data, actually anything really over 100, the standard cloud options, software only, Mozy, Carbonite, are really not going to be appropriate for you. If you have a small business server, it's a product Microsoft makes. It includes Exchange Server for email and SQL for databases. These cloud solutions are really inadequate for both large data sets or for Exchange servers or SQL servers. It really needs to, if you have that in place, you really need to go down to the CDP line, which we'll talk about next. So CDP, server-based, what is it? Okay, well, it's when you can't afford to lose any data. And, it's not as expensive as you think. It requires a dedicated server. It's a robust solution. It meets the tightest RPO and RTO objectives. It's image-based. It backs up everything fast and restores everything fast. You have a dedicated server, not a USB hard drive. It's a dedicated Windows server that handles these backups and restores. It captures everything. So basically, in as few as 5-minute increments, the server can take a picture of your production servers, and that means operating system, data, applications, everything. It captures everything on the server C drive and any data volumes, and it's 95% automated. And if you're a Common Sense Solutions customer with CSS DataGuard Plus, it's actually more than that. It's probably 99% automated because we do all the monitoring and let you know if anything's happening. You don't have to sit there and monitor backup emails and alerts. These solutions, you put them in and they just work. The cons to this, if you're not a CSS customer, it can be costly. You have to go buy a server. The software's not cheap, etc. You'll have to hire somebody that's trained and also certified in backup and disaster recovery processes to configure these solutions. They can be extremely complex because they're meant to support just about anything that's thrown at it in terms of your environment. So in terms of cost, again, just like the cloud backup above, it varies, usually per gigabyte, but not always. Our solution, DataGuard Plus for CDP, it involves no upfront CapEx. So you're not laying down money for a server. It's an entirely leased solution, billed monthly, and if we didn't have to get a server for it, it could be done relatively quickly, but since we do order a server for every client individually, which is our equipment, we just, it takes about maybe a week, 2 weeks to get it set up, but it's well worth the wait, and we can always set up something temporarily if you have no solution in the meantime. It is billed monthly. You just pay a monthly fee, and all your data and all the benefits associated that come with continuous data protection, you get all that rolled into one nice, neat package. So let me just talk about the last slide here. What's the cost of no plan? I've mentioned that you're going to pay for this one way or another. If you have no plan and no backup, or you don't know, and you might as well assume that you have no backup, even if you do, is it backing up what's appropriate for your business goals? Do you have RPOs? Do you have RTOs? Have you set those things? Have you talked to someone knowledgeable about what your current backup solution is and what it's really doing? Our job as IT consultants, okay, and MSPs, managed service providers, if nothing else, is to protect your data. Backup is the absolute top priority, along with antivirus, to prevent anything from happening in the first place. The two kind of go hand in hand. It's data protection. But the cost of not having any plan, do the math. I encourage you. Do the math yourself and figure out what an hour of downtime costs your business and reference those previous slides where we went through the examples. And is that honestly something you can tolerate? Is that something your customers can tolerate? We try to give businesses, give you a competitive edge in the marketplace through efficient use of technology. So if you're a DataGuard Plus customer and you experience a data loss, depending on how we have it configured, we can have you back up and running in as little as 5 to 10 minutes. Your competition probably isn't paying as much attention to this as you are. So when their customers call them and they're saying, oh, you know what, our systems are down right now, I really can't take your order at this time. The first thing they're going to do is go to Google and hopefully they find you and get a person on the phone who says, yeah, I'm happy to take your money. So that's really what this is all about. The cost of no plan, don't risk it. Don't gamble it. Have car insurance. Have homeowners insurance. Have health insurance. Have all these things. Have data insurance. You will pay for it one way or another, I assure you. It's not a matter of if you're going to lose data, but when. So here up on the screen is my contact info. I believe the webinar is being recorded and will be posted somewhere on our website. But again, my name is Kevin Cornett. My email address is kevinc@cssworks.com. Our main number is 630-379-0330. You just ask for Kevin C. Make sure you specify. We also have a Kevin B. And although he, we get along really well, I don't think he likes being my secretary for the most part, taking my calls, nor do I for him. So we've also got a toll-free number, 888-523-2568. All of our pertinent address details, if you want to drop us a line via U.S. mail in the 21st century, feel free. But as far as the presentation goes, that's pretty much all I have. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to contact me. And I think I don't see any questions off the bat. Here, let me just check and see if anybody's typed in any questions or tried to chat or anything here. I don't see anything. So I would just encourage everyone to just call in or give us a call, shoot me an email. All my contact information is there. And if you have any questions or are interested in any of our solutions, feel free to reach out. And I'm always around. I always respond to emails ASAP. So thanks very much for attending the webinar, and we appreciate your time.